Good morning, everyone, and thank you for registering and attending today's webinar. We're really excited to be giving everyone a sneak peek at our Command Training Center and SimCloud, which is going to begin shortly. We do have a little bit of music in the background. I do apologize for that. Hopefully it won't be disruptive during the webinar. So what we're going to do is Jonathan's going to give a brief overview of how the next 30 minutes will go. He'll give a live demo, and then we will field questions at the end of the webinar. Just to let you know, a recording will be sent out before the end of the day of the webinar today, so you will get a recording of everything we learned today. So give maybe 1 or 2 minutes, just maybe 30 seconds. And Jonathan, if you want to get started, we can go.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you all for attending. I know, as Judy mentioned, we're really excited about today's talk. Hope you can hear me well. A little bit of background over the background music. And of course, today's talk is something that's been in the works for several years, and it is the #1 request from our customers. I think you're going to be very interested in this. So again, I think Judy is recording this, and so this recording will be available probably a few hours or by tomorrow. So you can come play this back, and if you miss something or have to leave. So what I'm going to talk about over the next 20 minutes is different types of exercises that you can now do with SimsUshare and what you'll be able to do, kind of to set the scene for what is this CTC and the SimCloud. Then I'm going to show a demonstration of it and how then you can go and actually sign up and test, which will be starting in late July. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat window, and Judy is going to monitor that. And then toward the end, we'll open that up. If Judy does see a question that needs to be answered immediately, she'll come back on, and I'll do that as well. So, well, if you can, try and hold the questions to the end, but if you need to, certainly put them in the box, and we'll answer them by the end or in the middle. So now typically where SimsUshare is used is you will connect the computer or the iPad or the device to a TV, whether it's with a wire or wirelessly, and show it up in front of a screen, ask questions, then have your students respond, maybe navigate to different locations. And so most of the time it's projecting the simulation from a single device onto the screen in front of a class. Now, when you want to try and do multi-company drills, you might actually have several devices in the room, and each device has loaded the same scenario, the same simulation. But as you know, the devices themselves are not connected to each other, meaning that if you make a change, let's say an evolving condition in one, you would have to, on the other device, click a button to evolve the condition or have it set by time on the other device. So this is good for multi-company training, but it's very hard to actually coordinate any actions and responses. So for example, in the picture, you see there's let's say the command officer looking from the command post, and maybe you have another device or several devices of the teams, the entry team, maybe the decon having their own computer. But if there was any evolution of the scenario, that would have to be done at each computer or at each tablet or phone. There really isn't a way to coordinate the evolution of the scenario. So that begs the question, how do I coordinate scenarios? How do I coordinate exercises, let's say for multi-company drills, for evaluation? And that's, we get to another type, I'm calling it multiple devices, but central control. So you have an instructor, one instructor, like a tabletop, who's going to control multiple devices. And as of yet, SimsUshare doesn't do this. So in the pictures you see on the left, you see different computers with different screens and an instructor in the room. You see on the right-hand side, again, you see some different computers. And in the multiple devices central control, there's someone who is actually controlling the overall evolution. And then the different people on the different computers are not only seeing that same scenario, but if the organizer, the controller changes conditions, they all see that update. And so it's a way of controlling multiple devices from a central location and doing a more true multi-unit, multi-company exercise. So in a nutshell, that's what SimsUshare CTC, Command Training Center, is about. It's about having a web-based, a browser app, which will be the SimsUshare CTC app, in which you'll be able to have the SimsUshare app join into exercises all on the internet without any installs. And the central instructor, the coordinator, can actually then access and control where the multiple people go. Now, you'll also be able to have the individual units move to different locations, just like they can now. And when units move to different locations, that will show up as well on the instructor's panel. So I'm really excited to show you that. And the idea of the sort of complementary product is called SimCloud. So to be able to do this online, or we will offer a way that you could have your own server. So it will be a LAN, a local area network that's not connected to the internet. So we need a way to put the scenarios online somewhere. And that's what the SimCloud does. You can now actually, with this update, upload your scenarios to the cloud. We actually use by default Amazon's webs or Amazon's storage. And then it's very easy to actually distribute your simulations. Whether or not you use the CTC or you just have SimsUshare on another device, you can easily download the simulations. So this is going to be solving an important issue of how do you share simulations easily among your devices. Kind of to recap before we get to the actual demonstration, the SimsUshare CTC is going to be about connecting and controlling multiple units in the same exercise. As I mentioned, it doesn't need any software to install. It runs through standard browsers. You can keep your participants, your units in their stations or wherever, in the same room, different rooms, across your county, across your region. Use all your web or local deployment, easy to start up. We're going to have different plans, starting at something which will be, as our sort of tradition, making it inexpensive to get you going with small exercises, and of course, ultimately multi-platform. The SimCloud is going to allow you to store and share your simulations in the cloud and then access the simulations from the web with any platform. And it's a way to keep backups or to be able to distribute and share your simulations. So I'll actually stop at this point to see if we have any questions before we actually go to the live demonstration. Judy?
There are no questions at this time, Jonathan.
Okay. So what we do here, let me go over. So let's say I'm going to actually go back over here. You open up SimsUshare. Now, so over here, you go to a location and you'll get your SimsUshare login. Again, this is actually currently it's in our alpha testing. And so what we would like to do at the end of this is talk to you about how you might be interested in using this now and helping us test it through basically our early beta and late beta stages. So you can use it now, it's fully functional. We just want to test it at a larger scale. So once I log in, now I get a couple of different options here. I can create exercises. I can look at my scenarios. That's the SimCloud. I can actually create users. So you might actually have some users in your department just can run scenarios as opposed to users who can actually load scenarios and rename and delete and everything. So you don't have to give access to all your scenarios to anyone who just want to be able to run a scenario. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my scenarios tab, and you'll see I've loaded a couple of these scenarios here. And if I look over here, I'll say, like, let's take this Wayne Street single family residence. And I'm going to be able to, inside here, actually go and preview it. And you'll see this gives me what the scenario. Now you'll notice as well, this is running through a browser. This is not in the SimsUshare app. And so I can actually go through here just the same way as if you had the app loaded. So ultimately, you will also be able to have participants in your scenarios just through web browsers without actually having to install or download anything on your on the computers. And whether that's to participate in multi-company drills or just simply to be able to view and use your existing simulations that are stored in the SimCloud. So let's use the Wayne Street single family residence. That's one we created for our Academy SimsUshare portal. And what I'm going to do now is go and say, let's see, let me show you how you actually, so if I'm in SimsUshare here, and let's say I go into, I've got a scenario like my residential. Let me see what that one looks like. I've got this one has just, I guess I got a little guy there. Let me get rid of that guy. And let's say now I want to bring that into the cloud. I hit residential. I go to my menu. I say upload Sims. It'll automatically provide a repository here, and you can actually even create your own repositories. I hit connect. It'll ask me to log in, and we've created a dummy account for this webinar. And then I have my scenarios here. I can see which scenarios do I have on the repository in the SimCloud. I'm going to take residential. I'm going to bring it over and then start. I'm going to upload, package, transfer, and it's done. So now I go back to here and I look at, let's see, I look at my scenarios. We'll see there's residential. And so there now, in a moment, you'll see. So that's how the sort of SimCloud works in uploading. And it would work the same way essentially in downloading. You'll be able to go through in your SimsUshare app and download directly into the SimsUshare app from your repository. You'll see download and upload Sims. Right there is the second or third last ones. But what's really interesting is let's look at the multiplayer. So to get to the multiplayer, I click on play. And now what I'm going to do is go here and say there's a new item in addition to upload. There'll be start CTC multiplayer. So it'll give me a server to connect to. I say connect. Now, this will give you an exercise code and unit name. So that's going to make sense when we look at how to create exercises. I go to my exercises, and you can create multiple running exercises simultaneous. I'm going to say create, and I'm going to call this one, let's say this is going to be single family residence Wayne Street. And I'm going to give a code. And this, we're still working on the exact formats of the code, but I'm just going to call it SFR. I could really call it Wayne, or what I'll call it Wayne. And I'm going to choose the scenario, the simulation that it's based on. Of course, that has to be loaded into the SimCloud. And then I hit create. And so now it's telling me there are no participants yet in this. If I go back over to my app and I go and say, okay, I'm going to join in Wayne, type in the code. My unit, I'm going to bring in Battalion 1. So I hit join. And this is what's happening. This is what the user sees. They don't see the web browser here. But let me actually also bring another unit in. As we notice here in the staging area, Battalion 1 is ready. And I can bring units in now. I can disconnect them, you'll see if I want, or I can just go and start the exercise. I'm going to now go and do a split screen here so you'll be able to see what this is like. So now if I go here and say, okay, let's start the exercise, you'll notice on the left here, he's now started, automatically starts, and I can join in later as well if I want. And you'll notice over here, this is our CTC panel. And we try to keep it very simple. We have a time, we have a way to stop it and then to reset. And then this is our main area, the dashboard. You notice in this scenario, we have multiple locations, A, Alpha Bravo, Charlie, Alpha Delta, approach, and then we have knockdown locations. You'll sort of see peeking out under here, a preview window. So this is now actually, this previewer lets you track users or locations. So for example, if I want to see what does Alpha look like, I just click on Alpha. That shows me the preview. If I want to see what Alpha Bravo is, I just click there. You as the instructor are the only ones seeing these views. They're not seeing anything else. As far as your units are concerned, they're involved either waiting and staging or on their locations. So I can just click on a unit, click on location. If I want to see what a unit is viewing, I can click on that unit. So I clicked on Battalion 1, notice it's in the approach, following Battalion 1 at approach. So it says following, so let's watch over here. If I go this, and now if I say we're following Battalion 1, if Battalion 1 moves forward, notice now that Battalion 1 is at A, or now Battalion 1 is at Alpha Bravo. So this left window shows you what the unit is seeing. And I can see over here in my dashboard, notice how Battalion 1 is now at Alpha Bravo. If I'm not viewing it, I can deselect it, but now still, as I move around, you'll see there it moved to Alpha, and then I moved to Alpha Delta, I moved to Charlie, and so on. So this tracks in your dashboard all your different users. Now this is a single user. On this side of the viewer, this is yours area to play with. You're not being tracked. It's just showing wherever you'd like to go, kind of preview before potentially sending the units to those locations. Let's make it more interesting though. Actually, I'll take a moment, pause, Judy, if we have any questions about this sort of basic operation.
There's no questions, Jonathan.
Okay, so let's go here and let's actually create a new window. So this is now, let's say that this is either a second device, or like you're seeing here, could be another creating another user for this. So I'm going to go here and say play, and I'm going to follow the same steps. I'm going to say start CTC, go to the server, put my code in, but now instead of Battalion 1, I'm going to be Engine 1. I'm going to hit join. It's going to say, now notice immediately it's going to enter the scenario. So it's not going to wait in staging because the scenario is already running. If I look at my dashboard now, let me actually see if I can arrange these so that's a little bit, so it's easier to see. So now there's the two. This is, you notice over here, this is on Windows and Mac. The title bar says Engine 1 here, whereas the other window says Battalion 1. So you can open up multiple users on the same computer if you want. But if we look at our dashboard, you'll see Battalion 1's at Charlie side. That's up here. Engine 1's at Approach. So if I move Approach over, let's say to Alpha, you'll see now Engine 1's moved to Alpha. So as Battalion moves around, Battalion 1, you notice at this point, Battalion 1 and Engine 1 are at the same location. And so really, we wanted to make it simple drag and drop, because this is the basic functionality that we think is going to be most useful for making it easy for instructors to learn how to manipulate, and also for users to naturally go through progressions. So now let me say that I want to evolve the condition to make it a knockdown. That's what I actually have my location, A, K, A, B. What I can do is say multi-select, and I can do Engine 1 and Battalion 1, and I can move them into Alpha knockdown. You'll notice in a moment, both of them moved into a knockdown condition. So now they can move around individually. They're not stuck together, but I wanted to show you how you might move groups of units at the same time. And you can see each of them are independent, but they're being tracked individually, and they can be moved as a group. One other thing you might do here, you might see here it says locations per row. If you have your locations maybe not set up for 5 in a condition, you can change this to be, let's say, 3. If you can change this to be, let me see, I'm trying to get to that. Not drop down, you can 3, 4, 5. You can try it. You can make them all scrollable. Let's see. So now you would actually scroll across, so they're all in a single row. And as I sort of move back across, if I move it, you'll see it starts scrolling there. So it just depends on how you prefer to actually view your different. I guess I'm already at A, B there, so it didn't change. The last piece before we get to the question and answer, at the bottom you'll see there's a communication chat. So all the stuff that's happening is recorded. You notice the timestamp, but I can communicate with all the units. If I say, let me say I want to tell Engine 1 to report something. I can click and say, Engine 1, report a victim on the second floor. So let's say Engine 1's part of a search team. So when I click this over here, you'll see Engine 1 gets a little message. It's only to me, report a victim on the second floor. You see that Battalion 1 is not getting that message. If I actually said to everyone, all over here, maybe I say the owner has returned and is at side A. So now if I click to all, you'll notice everyone gets that message. Now, the extra bonus I mentioned about the web browser version. You'll see there's another tab here. I can actually go and add another client here, but not in the SimsUshare app. Let's say Engine 2 is connecting by the web browser. All I have to do here is go to that site, and then I hit create, and now this is actually a debugging panel, so this won't appear. But if you'll notice, we've got the same scenario here, and if I go through, I'm now running, and I'll be able to do full screen, kind of like what you saw. If I go over to the panel, let me go over here. Now on dashboard, let me go back and show, let's say do 5 per row. Now you'll see engine 2 is at Alpha Bravo. So I'm gonna split this up so you can see it at the same time. So I do that. And now I'm gonna do this. And so again, you won't see this left panel here, but now if I'm moving engine 2, you'll see I move them around there. Maybe I'll move that engine 2 to Alpha Knockdown. And regardless of whether you use the SimsUshare app or the web app for the client, I can, if I multi-select, I can say engine 2, engine 1, whatever, battalion 1, and I can move them as a unit, and they'll all go there. And similarly, if I want to track what the web browser person is doing, engine 2, I click, it says follow engine 2 at Charlie, and you can see here as I move around, that follower window is following whichever unit you have selected. You only can really select one to follow at a time, of course. But again, that's really the power of this, is the ability to, in the same essential scenario, you can control how the scenario evolves by moving units to locations that are appropriate for those conditions. And so this, again, because it's done for a web browser, you don't even have to actually have the SimsUshare app installed to be able to now do multi-company trainings across stations, across your region, so long as you have some other communication mechanism, whether a radio or some other type of communication device. So I know I've gone through a lot of stuff there, but the real basic components is the ability to drag and drop units, to be able to connect on the web, and still be able to, when you make your scenarios, independently move around. So let's get onto questions here about our testing. We're doing right now private alpha and beta testing, and it's going to begin in late July, and it's going to be starting just for Windows and Mac computers. If you have an iOS, an iPad, or Android, you can still participate. We would just be sending you Windows and Mac versions of the newest software. And it is going to be open to all interested customers, you and other people who you might know might want to try this out. We expect to have 3 or 4 groups of testers, meaning that we expect to have some early testers at basically late July, and then introduce more testers over the successive weeks. And we're doing that so that we can also see, as new people, as we get feedback and update the system, we can get feedback from fresh eyes. Our anticipated formal release is going to be in September, early to mid-September this year. And the interested customers, we're going to have a very mild screening process. We're developing a questionnaire so we can help us understand how you would use it. That should be coming early next week from Judy. And it is going to require a small amount of commitment to give us feedback and testing of the program. So at this point, I'm going to thank you on behalf of Judy and I for your attention. As you can tell, we're really excited about this because it's going to open up a lot of new dimensions for training. We also have sort of tentatively scheduled our next user group webinar for Tuesday, September 18th. Note it's a Tuesday, not our typical Wednesday. But now we'll open up to questions, see whether Judy has some final comments, and we'll go from there. Thank you again for your attention.
Jonathan, that was fantastic. And like you said, I'll repeat it. We definitely are really, really excited about this new phase that we have coming for SimsUshare. We've definitely tried with Jonathan and the creators to make sure that it is, as easy to use as possible. We definitely really would love to hear from you, and whether or not you'd be part of our feedback group. Right now, if there's any questions as to what Jonathan has shown today, we'd love to hear from you. We have one comment from Scott Osben, who just said thank you. But if there's anybody else that has questions of anything that was shown today, definitely let us know. Daniel Philagus, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, has asked if can participants join in a different slide location. Example, engine 1 join at slide with a different view as if they approach from a different side.
Yeah, good question, Dan. And so currently they would approach at the default location when you make your scenario. And so if you want people to approach differently, what we would suggest is making basically like a responding slide where they all would come in, and then the instructor would place them at whichever location they want to come in. So currently the scenario is the same for every user in that exercise. And so there wouldn't be a way to individually assign them automatically. But the way around that is to have them come into a common initial location, maybe like their station, and then place them manually into the location you want them to arrive.
Perfect.
Another thing which we want to point out, sorry, and thanks Dan for the question. In our current SimsUshare, we advise to evolve conditions by clicking on buttons, let's say like the middle upper button to advance to a different condition. For example, if I show here, let me open up SimsUshare here, you notice I have this button navigation, and if you're only in a single device, we say, oh, why don't you use a button to kind of go to another condition, like the knockdown you see over here. But now with the multiplayer, when you make your scenarios, you don't actually need to have the individual. You don't want the individual to control when they jump to a new condition. So you're going to want to adapt your scenarios a little bit to get rid of condition changes that you've linked to navigation buttons.
Perfect. The next question is, was this recorded, and if so, how can I access? I came in late. Not to worry, it is being recorded right now. And by the end of today, all the registrants from today's event will receive an email from me or from us, and included in that email will be a copy of the recording. So definitely you'll be able to watch this again. There's a question from David.
Just one last thing over here, though, about that. We have over here as well, if you go down and see on our web page, there's webinars. And if you click on webinars, this will appear by tomorrow. Once we get the recording, you'll see here's tells you it's like view previous webinars. If you scroll down, you'll see like the last one we did. Actually, this looks like a couple of times ago, but introduction to our SimsUshare Academy. So this one, you'll see we'll have actually here with a link to the video. Okay,
Perfect.
sorry, Judy. Thank you. David?
The next one, David Vasquez is asking, can this be used for wildland fires also?
Well, it still uses the SimsUshare, the SimsUshare basic set of effects. So it can be used for any type of scenario. Now, that having been said, because this is kind of a sneak peek, we are introducing 8 more effects that will be probably after the CTC, but if you are interested, we'll probably put a note in there for people who want to try out some. We have, I think it's about 4 and 4 of new flames and new smoke. So it may not come out in September, we have to decide, but we're trying to make some more effects that could be appropriate for the large scale wildland. And of course, we'd like feedback. So if there are things that are missing, we'd love to hear it. And that actually is another great point about updating. You know, right now, when we update our program, people have to download the app and then they have to install it, and a lot of times involve IT, which can involve security. We're moving everything really to web technology. And that means that in the future, as we also roll out our SimsUshare Builder editor online, we'll be able to actually update the editor, the player, all just really almost continuously. So we'll be able to add effects, we'll be able to effects. So this is really going to streamline the way that we can deliver better features, if there are bug corrections, without having to do the whole cycle of download, install, notify, and get different versions. So
yeah,
you know, good question.
Seamless for the clients. The next question, sorry.
You know, that's so important as well for mobile devices, because as people may or may not know, when we update our iOS app, we have to go through an elaborate review process that Apple may reject for whatever reason Apple wants to reject it. So this helps us.
Jonathan, we have a ton of questions. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
The next question is from Keith Clark, and he just said, should those interested in participating in the test groups contact Judy directly? Sure, you can absolutely send me an email and let me know if you're interested, and we'll be, like he was stating in that slide, we'll be making probably 3 or 4 different test groups, and we can make sure that we get you slotted into the correct one.
Yeah, everyone who's interested will get eventually. We just want to you know, sort of time it as well. So at the early groups will have fewer people. So we definitely want to get people involved. So let us know about kind of your thoughts and urgencies so we can get you in the right group.
The next question is from Ryan Gentry. Can you print the timeline at the end of the scenario?
So the timeline over here is a text box. So we're going to make sure to have this. So I can basically select it. So I can select it, and then I can then move it into a text editor or Word or whatever and print that out.
Perfect. The next question is from Chris Hunt. How many condition changes can you have in this scenario?
So really, that's only limited by what you want to do for in a scenario. I mean, for like how many locations you want to put. So we have a scenario which actually a hotel scenario that I think has about 80 locations, 80. And so there would be in this situation, there would be if there were 80, then it's gonna be 160 rows. So it's a lot of rows. But so it just depends on how many locations and conditions that you want to have and how you can manage. I should also mention that you also can open up multiple controller panels. So let's say you have, after you get more than about 10 people in a scenario, they'll all be located in the boxes, but maybe you want to have some help in managing them. So you can open up a second or third instructor panel and have those other instructors manage certain groups or certain areas and locations. So,
Perfect.
okay.
The next question is, how many different locations can be used on the command screen?
Yeah, and this is going to scroll. So if we see over here, if I actually did 3, this will just kind of keep scrolling as many locations as you have to fit. So whether or not, if you did it by 3, you'd get those rows. If you want to fit it all in one for some reason, you would then use the scroll, or the all one over here will show you, gives you most of them except for the last 2. So it really, it's gonna scroll to fit. And we recognize that you may want to be running this from an iPad or tablet or even a phone. So if we actually look from, let's pretend we're on a phone, you'll see we can even run it. It's not going to be as convenient, but it does adapt to the size of the screen. So maybe for a small exercise, you could have the instructor be on the phone.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question, can the effects be altered? This is from Christian Wargo. Can the effects be altered while personnel are involved in the exercise depending on their actions?
Okay, so the scenarios are fixed that you create. However, just like over here, if we see, you can create different locations that would have different looks to them. So right here, we're now at, let's say we're at Charlie. We're going to look over here. Battalion 1 is at, let's see. Let me see if I get, I don't want to actually select multiple, I'm going to select all of them. So let's say I'm going to look at what Engine 2 is looking at. I can actually, if I have over here like my AK, I can make a different location that is the result of, say, proper mitigation, the putting out the fire. And so what then I can do is I can move my units over to the location that then, let me go over there and show you Engine 2. So I can then go and move them there. So you can't dynamically change the pictures, but the different locations, with one exception, the location of victims. That's what this thing, it's more advanced, we can get to about variables. So there are whether victims or things that appear and disappear, and you can change those dynamically. Let's say like ladders or tools or apparatus or victims. So those can be changed dynamically without having a different location.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is from Theodore Nee, but I do believe we've answered it. His question is there a limit to the number of locations I can create? And I think Jonathan answered that, saying that you can make this scenario as advanced as you want and have, he mentioned the number 80 locations if you wanted.
Yep.
The final question that I have that's come in, and we are past our 12 o'clock, so I do apologize, but we do love all the excitement and buzz and the questions that we're getting. This last question is from Daniel Villegas again. Confirming the central controller advances users in the simulation by dragging and dropping units to different slides based on orders and feedback from participants.
That's absolutely correct. That's right. So we don't really dictate how you should move around. The organizer, the controller, the instructor, whatever you want to call that person, decides where that can be moved. But of course, fundamentally, the scenario itself when you make your scenario, like what's the starting location, how many options there are. So it's a combination of how flexible you make your scenarios, as well as then what the organizer, the instructor can have the people move among those. And, the other thing, which I mentioned about the evolution of the program, we have a lot of exciting ideas in mind. I'll just sort of mention like having a panel for benchmarks, where you can sort of check stuff off for the organizer. Obviously more effects. So these are kind of things that it's all going to be enabled by our new system. So we're excited about hearing what you want, what you'd like to see, and then implementing those.
Okay, so a couple more have come in. So this one is a comment from James Crowley. Jonathan, this new edition looks great. I need to think about how I could apply this to a small fire company to use the features of this program. He's from Mohawk Mountain House.
Yeah. Hey Jim, and absolutely. Well, one of the good news things, I don't know if I mentioned it, Judy, but Judy knows obviously. We want to make this available. We want to understand the needs of all size departments, and so we're going to, at some level, incorporate the basic abilities of this into even the lowest level. I mean, make it very affordable and usable. And we're talking about exactly how to do that by limiting maybe concurrent scenarios. But so when you see this and you think, boy, this is going to be expensive, I want to kind of let you know we understand that even for small groups, this can be really useful, and that's how we're going to really position it so it's accessible and available for small, medium, and large groups.
Right, and so the last comment that we have, this is from Jeffrey Jones, and he was just asking, he said, just out of curiosity, can you show us the living room view?
Oh yeah, okay. Let's see. Let's see if I can. Well, I can go. Let me actually put. Let me put. Let's say I'll put Battalion 1 into the living room, and let's see. I forget which one. Battalion 1. Oh, that's not Battalion 1. I put the wrong one there, but I'll put Battalion 1 in the living room. Okay. There's Battalion 1. Okay. So there. So in this scenario, I think I forgot to actually make a way to get into the living room, but yeah, that's a good point there. You see that I've got living room, and you notice I don't actually have living room knockdown. So this is just an example scenario, but that's how you'd obviously make some sort of entryway from either Alpha or Charlie or some door to get into this and get out of the room. You could actually have it so where you put people into another location and they can't get out. So for example, if you wanted teams working in different locations and they were not able to, maybe they're at different sites. Maybe they're completely separated geographically, so they could still be in the same scenario, but they can, by controlling which arrows that you have in the scenario, they only can move around their geographic area and require the organizer to place them if they want to move between sites.
Fantastic. Another from Jeffrey, thanks. I was wondering exactly how many views you can put in a scenario.
So in the views, you can make any number. I mean, it depends on how many conditions, so we don't really have a limit. You can actually, if it's views in using the app here, you can just create more tabs and have more views so people can, more units. If it's the views actually in the simulation, like over here, you can create any number of locations. It can be as few as 1 or 2, or it can be as many. As I mentioned, we have a simulation that has 80 locations, and its locations, they're not all in the same condition. We have, I think, 5 or 6 different conditions, and so that would make approximately 15 per condition. But you're not limited that way, and you're certainly not limited with this organizer into a limited number of views. Okay. Oh.
Perfect. And Jeffrey just said, awesome, that adds to the real reality of the SimsUshare. So that's fantastic. So definitely lots of interest. I've already received an email of somebody that would like to be part of the test group, so thank you.
Fabulous.
Definitely. We are, as I said earlier, we're past that 30-minute mark, and I'm so glad that everybody was so interested, and Jonathan did a great job showcasing what's coming down the pipes. And I'd like to thank everyone again for their time. Jonathan, thank you for creating this next step in SimsUshare and for putting on a great demonstration today. As
Thank you,
Jonathan
Judy.
stated, our next user group, this is tentative, is Tuesday, September 18th, 11:30 Eastern. And of course, the topic will be determined by you. And if you have any specific topics you want, we'll make sure we get them on the agenda for upcoming user groups.
That's right.
So,
We tentatively put the CTC and SimCloud because that would be more the formal release. But again, it probably would be more a specific topic around how to use the program.
Perfect. So thank you all for coming. Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing from everybody, and everybody have yourself a fantastic day.